Yesterday, Joe Manchin met with President Biden and Chuck Schumer in Delaware to hash out details of the reconciliation package. Manchin, as we've covered on this show, has been an outspoken critic of the president's budget. According to the White House, the meeting was a productive discussion and Democrats continue to make progress. Meanwhile, Senator Kyrsten Sinema officiated a wedding in Arizona, and the nonstop protests that have dogged her everywhere followed her there as well. Julia Manchester, a reporter with The Hill, and Philip Wegman, White House reporter for Real Clear Politics, join us to discuss. Welcome to you both.
Thank you for having me.
So, footage of the Arizona wedding was posted online over the weekend. Let's take a look at some of that.
This is a wedding. Do you know this is a wedding? It's a wedding. Hi, thanks for ruining my wedding. I really appreciate it.
You know what? She's ruining our life. That's I'm sorry.
It's just my wedding.
I know. I'm beautiful. You are.
Well, I really wish I could enjoy my wedding without you ruining it.
I'm an Ivy League educated white old man, and I've been destroyed by this economy. And that corruption stems from corporate power. And Sinema is taking corporate money to destroy us all. And climate will do it without her. So wake up! Woo! Woo! Why don't you get married to Donald Trump?
And the protesters did agree, actually, to be quiet throughout the ceremony. Here's this.
Can I just make a compromise? We're protesting Sinema. We're not protesting this bride. Let's just shut our mouths now. Let the ceremony begin. We can walk quietly with our signs. It's my daughter. I know. Okay. Please. Yeah.
So, Philip, what are you hearing about how close the White House is to a deal here? Are we likely to see a vote this week?
Well, I think one thing is for certain, and that is at this point, these protests against the senator, they are not moving the needle for her in any way. She has been protested against while running a marathon, while trying to teach a class, and now while officiating a wedding. That doesn't seem to be getting to her. I actually spoke to one of the protesters who confronted her at that university in Arizona, and they basically said that this is par for the course now, that they are not protesting. Instead, they are bird dogging, and that no space is going to be safe for the senator unless they vote in the way that she wants. I don't think this is going to change her mind, and instead, I think this is just sort of ephemera as we get closer and closer to an eventual vote. In the end, I think that what this is going to come down to is not necessarily reasoned policy debates among senators. We already have, Democrats sort of arguing about a top line, agreeing on some number, and then figuring out what they can get underneath that top line included. I think what this is going to come down to is deadlines, and there are two that are important to the White House. The first is obviously what we're seeing in Virginia. Terry McAuliffe would love a win on infrastructure in this package so that he could point to what Democrats are doing in D.C. as evidence of the adults being back in the room and being in control. And the other is Glasgow. The president would love to go into that summit being able to point to some of these climate policies being signed into law. I think that those deadlines might actually end up being what forces a vote, and not necessarily shouting at dancing unicorns.
Well, last week, Republicans blocked Democrats' voting reform bill, the Freedom to Vote Act, from further advancement. And some Democratic lawmakers are calling on the administration to reform or eliminate the filibuster so that Democrats can clear the path to pass voting legislation, calling the Voting Act necessary to counteract voter restrictions in Republican-controlled states across the country. During a town hall last week, President Biden was pressed on whether or not he'd consider altering the filibuster over the issue. Let's watch.
When it comes to voting rights, just so I'm clear, though, you would entertain the notion of doing away with the filibuster on that one issue. Is that correct?
And maybe more.
And maybe other issues.
Julia, I'd love to get your reaction to that. Is it time to tackle the filibuster?
I think progressives would definitely want Biden to tackle the filibuster, as well as his fellow Democrats in general. Speaking of Terry McAuliffe, we've actually heard the former governor himself say on the campaign trail he would like to eliminate the filibuster if congressional Democrats can really rally behind that. Look, I think this is a way for Biden to really put an olive branch out or connect with the progressive wing of the party as they're, trying to muddle through a lot of these key agenda items he wants to get passed, not only ahead of the Virginia governor's race and his trip to Glasgow, but also in general ahead of the midterms. Eliminating the filibuster has been a huge Democratic progressive priority for a while. So I think after he made those comments, you had a lot of progressive organizations such as Bernie Sanders' Our Revolution really starting to express optimism that this could happen in the past. And I think it will also open the door for Biden to obviously get more pieces of his agenda passed ahead of the midterms.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was asked about Biden's response to the filibuster on CNN over the weekend. Here's how she reacted.
Do you agree with him on that one issue, that at the end of the day, having some sort of voting rights bill is more important than preserving the filibuster, at least for that one vote?
The most important vote right now in the Congress of the United States is the vote to respect the sanctity of the vote, the fundamental basis of our democracy. So if there were one vote that the filibuster could enable to go forward, that would be the vote.
Philip, voting rights is such an important issue for not just for progressives, but really for Democrats in general. So, they're talking openly about it at this point. Where do you think this is going to head?
I still remember one of Jen Psaki's very first press briefings, and the immediate question from all of the reporters was, what was President Biden's position going to be on the filibuster? And again, Psaki stood behind the podium and said his position has not changed. I don't think that we have seen a significant evolution when it comes to the president's thinking on the filibuster. Yes, he says that he would like to see more of a talking filibuster, like in sort of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington fashion, where you have a senator who actually has to stand on the floor and hold the well rather than, calling filibuster and just walking away. But for the most part, the president has been consistent from, that New York Times editorial board meeting, back in 2020, where he tells the New York Times, no, I'm not in favor of abolishing the filibuster, to what Psaki and others have told the press, to sort of his recent machinations with Anderson Cooper. He seems to be flirting with the idea that, oh, maybe we could change it if it was for the right issue. We would like to see some reforms here or there. Something obviously should change because Republicans are the worst and are entrenched. But look, Biden knows as well as anyone else that getting rid of the filibuster is going to run into a lot of the same problems that he's having right now. Do you really think that, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin are suddenly going to say, I'm going to support getting rid of the Senate procedure, which gives me all of my power? No, I think he realizes that. He knows that. And what he's doing is he's tempering expectations, I think, by saying that he's open to changes, like Julia mentioned, how he's sort of fostering hope on the left, while also taking a sort of more realistic view here, which is that going nuclear on the filibuster is still a very big lift.
Well, Julia, thank you so much for joining us. And Philip, thank you too.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll have more Rising right after this.